Welcome to Agree to Disagree, the podcast where two sisters show how you can disagree about everything but still keep that family bond and friendship.
That's right. We're Sharon and Karen, and we don't just see the world differently, we live it differently. Grab a coffee, settle in, and enjoy the conversation. Who knows, you might even find yourself changing sides. Hi, I'm Sharon. I'm coming to you from Texas.
Hi, y'all. I'm Karen, and I'm coming at you from Morocco, but I can still say y'all.
You said y'all. You did say y'all.
Today we're going to talk about Doge, not the coin, the Department of Government Efficiency.
It's a terrible name. Is there a coin named Doge?
You didn't know that? It's a
that's why
currency.
I don't. That's why I don't know it, because I don't trust digital currency one iota.
But Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, which is why I think he also named it Doge, because he wants to support crypto.
I could see him wanting to support crypto, but
yeah.
But I don't know that he got to name it. See?
Yeah, he's not in
charge
at all.
What else I thought about it. I thought about actually, did you read the latest that happened on Friday?
Well, I don't know what you're referring to. A lot happens every day. So you're going to have to enlighten me on what happened on Friday.
I know. So actually, on Friday...
Are you going to tell me that he's not the actual one in charge of Doge? Technically?
No. I'm going to tell you. No, I'm not going to tell you that. So Trump said the first significant move to narrow Musk's mandate publicly was, he told the cabinet secretaries, you should go first and you should keep all the people you want to keep and everybody that you need. But he said, we're going to be watching the departments. We're going to be watching to see if they're doing the cuts and stuff. And if y'all aren't doing what you need to do, then we'll bring Elon in. And Elon was in the room when he was talking.
Yeah, but he says that after Elon has already fired people, hired people, fired them again.
No, that's happened. That happened in one. No, that happened in one agency.
That's not true. That's happened in multiple.
Yes, I've been reading about it. It happened in one agency, and it was the Nuclear Energy Department of Energy or something, where that happened, and they're reinstating. But you know what? I've also been reading is that most of the cuts. First of all, they gave some departments an offer saying you can take early retirement and a severance package, your choice. But a lot of the other departments, they're just going in and saying, all you probationary employees that have been hired, the 10 to 15,000 of you that have been hired in the last 2 to 3 years, you're the ones that are getting cut. Because have you looked at the website that shows what the increase has been in the last 5 years of employees in these agencies?
I completely agree that federal agencies are probably overblown and there's a lot of waste. But how do you get rid of waste? Do you go in with a sledgehammer and just start laying people off, or do you go in and you do analysis and you find out where the problems are and where the waste is, and then you start laying off staff?
But they are doing that. So I did find also and read that Doge's very first assessment and evaluation was done in November of last year, months before they made any announcements in January.
Before they had access to, they're going in and they're doing a lot of this stuff.
They did an assessment back in November.
Even consulting the department heads. That's why Trump had to, on Friday, in the cabinet meeting, say, no, you cabinet leaders are actually responsible for laying off. The Department of Defense had to go and tell all of his people, don't listen to the email that Doge sent out saying, list 5 things you did this past week that will make you keep your job. And if you don't respond to it, you're going to get fired. A couple of different departments had to go and say, you guys don't respond to this stuff. Because 1, some of it's confidential. And 2, they don't know who needs to be cut. And it shouldn't be based on an email, if you respond or not, of what are the 5 things you did last week. The way they're going about this, I don't think anyone in the country doesn't agree that there is waste in government. Absolutely, there is waste in government, and it needs to be addressed. It's the way that they're doing it. Why do you think that the best way to go about that is with a sledgehammer instead of getting in and doing some real assessments?
I think assessments have been done. I think assessments are still being done by the looks of their website, which is much more robust now than it was several weeks ago. By the looks of their website, they are looking at the data. So in 2020, when Biden took over office, he increased Department of Veteran Affairs by 80,000 employees. And guess what? Increased the number of claims that sat on the books by 200,000. Okay, so then we're back up to 240,000. So by Trump coming in 2025, 4 years later, he's saying, I was able to process 230,000 claims with 80,000 less employees. So I think we can cut some employees, probationary employees that were hired in the last couple of years, we can cut. And this is another thing with all of these cuts that are going on. Like I said, what I've researched is most of them are probationary cuts. Okay, that is very normal for any elected official, coach, CEO to come in and make cuts to probationary employees.
I have no problem with that. I have no problem with the cuts being done. I just think the way that they're going about it, I don't think that a billionaire should be in charge. Again, we're talking about Doge. I don't think that a billionaire should be in charge of coming in and directing all these cuts when you have cabinet secretaries there. They should be in charge of making the cuts.
And that is where it's ending. And that's where it's ending.
But that's not where it began. Do you know what the issue is? You know what the issue is with Musk?
Some have money and power.
Yes, but not to the level that Musk does. The issue I think that a lot of people have with Musk is the fact that he has direct control now over things like government contracts. He has actually cut some government contracts and is benefiting personally because his businesses are now getting some of those contracts, government contracts.
No.
It is a conflict of interest that no one seems to care about. And it's a huge conflict of interest. Do you know how many billions he has received in government funding just since he started? Just since Trump got elected?
Do you know how many billions he has saved in government contracts?
Well, I don't know, because if you look at Doge, they change the numbers every day. They report misleading numbers.
Yeah.
They report things that are
$105 billion.
I don't trust. Now, you're the one that tells me you don't trust anything. Why do you trust that number? Tell me why you trust that number.
Because this is on an official government website. It is not the media.
So you trust things that are on official government websites.
Look out
you
to
were the
a
one
website
that told me
in the
you do
government
not
and look.
trust anything the government says.
I don't.
But you
I don't trust
Trump
a lot what
and
they say.
Elon. And this is what I don't get.
Let me
this
tell
is
you
what
why
I cannot wrap my head around.
Let me tell you why.
Let's talk about
I don't
Doge.
trust them explicitly.
Well, let's talk about Doge and the 105,000.
Let's talk about
Doge. Doge said that they cut like 2,300 contracts. Out of that, someone that actually went in and did some research found that 941 of those didn't even save them any money. Did you know last week that a case went to the Supreme Court because when they cut all of this stuff with USAID, which I don't disagree with cutting, they want to cut it, that's fine. But they didn't want to pay $2 billion in money to contractors for work that had already been completed. And it had to go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court for them to rule 5-4 that, yes, the U.S. government has to fulfill their promise of paying these people that have already completed work.
Yes, agreed.
How is that an issue?
Yes,
and how is that an issue that only 5 of the 9 justices agreed should happen? Doesn't that give you some pause at all as an American that the Supreme Court was split on a decision of does the U.S. government have to fulfill an obligation to pay people that have already completed their work?
Yeah, but was the work satisfactory or
it doesn't matter.
Successful?
If it's in the contract that they complete the work, then they should be paid.
Okay. Do you know
if you start down that road where you take everything, well, if I'm not happy with it, then you're never going to have to pay anyone anything.
But listen. So some of the $20 billion that they have cut from contracts are what are called blanket purchase agreements with consulting firms for $20 billion.
Yeah, that's fine. I have no problem with that.
All in one Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. And it's for research and evaluation. Research and evaluation cost $20 billion.
I have no problem with that.
To 6 consulting firms, the blanket purchase agreement. That is like a credit card.
I have no problem with the cuts. I have no problem with the cuts.
It sounds like you do, though.
No, I don't. I have a problem with, one, the way that they're going about it. I think they're taking a hacksaw to this when they shouldn't be taking a hacksaw to it, because they're making many mistakes. And my second problem is that what they're reporting on that website, the supporters like you believe everything they read on that website, and it is not necessarily true.
So I will grant you that I did dive into the research around the Social Security information. Yeah. I did dive into that. I read quite a bit into that.
And you found
those numbers, what? I will tell you what I found. However, it actually speaks to something else. So I will tell you what I found, because I'm like, I want to know why. Okay. And you and I talked about this last week, right?
And I dove into it too, because I wanted to know, are we paying people that are 300 years old? Because that would be a problem. And you found that we actually aren't paying anyone that's 300 years old.
Exactly. However, there was, in 2023, they have found that we are paying people that are dead. Right now, it's not.
It's a very small number.
But do you know what this speaks to? When I started reading through this, so 44,000 are still, which is like 2%, are still receiving Social Security benefits that are dead. Okay,
44,000, not the how many millions did he say?
Exactly. I know. I did my research too, and I dove into it, and I said, okay, but remember what we said. We're going to use statistics. Everybody does it. They use statistics to support their argument, not the other.
But I think the issue is that you have the president of the United States, and I am not saying that presidents don't lie, okay?
Yes, all presidents
But I
do.
think that you would have a hard time finding a president coming and making such an exaggerated lie from the actual number that you found, 44,000, and turning that into millions. And coming in bold-faced lying, there is someone over 300 years old receiving healthcare benefits. Because presidents do exaggerate, but they usually don't bold-face lie.
Well, that's just his personality. And let me say something that actually a friend, it is his personality. Let me say something a friend said to me this week, and it made me actually take a step back and think about this a little bit. And it may be a little bit strategic, actually. If he puts those kind of comments out there and he does all of this, like, with a hatchet and with a sledgehammer, and he's doing this kind of stuff, you know what it does? It focuses the media on that kind of stuff so he can actually work on really important crap.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay, let me tell you. You see it that way, which
I'm just saying
that is an eye-opener for me, because that is not how the other side sees it. Do you want to know how our side sees it?
I know how your side sees it.
The other side sees it as he wants to do all of this and come at it with a hatchet so that everyone in the media is focused on this, while he goes and does more nefarious stuff, like play with the stock market, benefit financially. So you're looking over here at this hand while he's doing things over here.
So benefit financially. Do you know in his first term, he took $1 as a salary for his 4 years? $1.
Sure, he didn't benefit financially at all. You're right. I mean, come on.
But I'm just saying.
Because because he made more money doing other things. He didn't have to
he doesn't need more money.
Oh, I heard this from someone, and they were talking about why they liked Musk. It's like, he doesn't need the money. He's not in it for the money. Do you know how much money he's made? They're in it for the money.
Well,
we're going to have a whole other conversation about that.
If we're going to talk that, I'm just saying, when we want to talk about a liberal that's getting money, money.
To me, again, the difference is, as a liberal.
This is why we shouldn't talk about people.
No, but the difference to me is, as a liberal, I have no problem sitting here saying, yeah, they're all scamming money. And I acknowledge that. I've never said, oh, he's a good person, he's not in it for the money. But you come to me and say Trump is not in it for the money.
I never said that.
This guy sells gold shoes.
I never said Musk wasn't in it for the money. I never said that.
No, I said you said Trump. You said Trump was not in it for the money.
I don't believe he's in it for the money.
I think that's funny. Anyway,
I don't believe he is. No.
Back to Doge.
Elon Musk may be, but he's not.
Issue with Doge is, I went to the website.
Your issue is that hatchet approach.
It's the hatchet. It's the way they're going about it. I think that Elon Musk has a huge conflict of interest. He should not be in charge of cutting contracts where his companies benefit from receiving
But
other contracts.
I will say this one thing, and so when I first started researching Doge a couple of weeks ago, when we were going to maybe talk about it back then, the question that kept popping into my mind, should a newly established department within the government be able to come in and make sweeping changes, organizational changes? I would say, like, just from a business perspective, from a just the way that you execute and implement change, because I'm a change manager in corporate America, right? You don't do that. Like, that is not smart business. That is not smart leadership. It's not smart business. It's not appropriate. You're going to piss off a lot of people.
So why do you support it?
So hang on. So there's another thought. There's another side to this, right? And you said it at the beginning. Our government is so inflated. Maybe, just maybe, devil's advocate here, maybe a hatchet is exactly what's needed right now, because all of these, the amount of money we would spend on making all these appropriate evaluations, it would take us 4 years if we did it the way the bureaucrats and the government wants to do it, and consulting and contracting with firms to come in and do proper evaluations. We're going to spend millions of dollars just to do a proper evaluation of what everything needs to be cut and who needs to be cut and who needs to be let go and what contract needs to
someone used this argument.
There's an argument.
Someone used this argument with me not too long ago, and I thought about it, and you can't sit there and say that you trust Trump and Musk to do the job, but they can only do it with a hatchet. Why can't they do it in a shorter? I see no reason why Musk and his team would be able to do the same thing, but with a little bit more caution.
Okay, wait. Doge is only in existence for 18 months. This organization goes away in 18 months. Did you know that?
Yes. Why can't they do that in 18 months?
They're doing it in 18 months, but it's going to take a little bit. And to your first point, remember what we said. It's not just two people doing this. The department heads have stepped up, and Trump has given them the directive. Y'all need to make these decisions. You need to go in and do this. So yes, was there a lot of hatchet talk in the beginning, and let's get all this out in the media and, maybe distract?
I think that we don't know yet the ramifications on the economy of all of these layoffs, because there are going to be ramifications.
You're right. However, there are going to be other things that are being put in place to help the economy.
Like?
Okay. Oh, that's a whole nother conversation. We're not going there. We're talking Doge. Okay.
So Doge, I went to the website, and the first thing I saw was they had said we saved
$105 billion.
Yeah, so I started,
which is only $652 per taxpayer, which really pisses me off.
Yeah, it's nothing. But it doesn't bother you at all that this Doge website, which is a government website, is posting things like, "Oh, we saved $8 billion. No, sorry, it was only $8 million."
Do you know what? I actually, for the first time ever, have visibility into the spending, which I really appreciate. Do they get it wrong? The numbers wrong? Absolutely.
But the visibility the visibility is it's superficial.
Absolutely.
This is my issue, is it's superficial, and sometimes it's misleading.
You know what? It is superficial right now, but it is generating conversations.
No, but people are looking. The majority of people are only looking at the quote that he makes. We saved $22 billion from HHS, free housing and cars for illegal aliens. It's totally bogus. The $22 billion was not giving free cars and housing to illegal aliens. They're misrepresenting what they're doing.
I'm not disagreeing you.
To me, the message that it sends. My issue is. When you send that message out there, people think, oh, then I have no problem with saving $22 billion if it was going to illegal aliens, and it makes them more angry for no reason. It's like, tell them honestly where that $22 billion was coming from. It was to help refugees and people that were legally in the country and not giving free anything. It's misleading.
Our government throughout history has been misleading.
That I agree with.
Yes, our government has been misleading throughout history. But I would rather have some visibility into the data.
Now that I agree with you. That I agree with you with. But you have to admit that the website looks like amateur hour. It does not look like what
Well,
you would expect a
again, this
government.
goes back to my point earlier about should a brand new established government department, which is only a temporary department that's only going to be in existence for 18 months, should they execute on this kind of stuff? Well, I'm not going to say it's not a professional website.
It's not about being professional. It's about you cannot verify the
you said it was
information that's on
very
there.
elementary. What'd you say? What'd you say? What was the word?
I don't remember. God, I can't remember what I said 2 seconds ago.
I know. What was the word you said? Was it
amateurish?
Amateurish. So this is what I have to say about that. This is exactly how most websites, especially ones that are showing data, reporting out data, this is what most of them look like nowadays. This is what they look like.
They talk about transparency.
America.
They talk about transparency, and they talk about we're going to show the people what we're doing, but there's no verification there. I had to go offline outside of Doge and really dig to verify the statements that they were putting on there. And I don't agree with that. If you're going to have transparency, have flipping transparency. Put the links out there so that you can verify where the stuff is coming from.
I agree with you on that 100%. Let me drill down from your website. However, just in the last 3 weeks since I first looked at this website, much more information's out there than what was just 3 weeks ago. So it is,
and it's also
developed,
all changed.
And it will change though.
But
it will change.
But do you not have a problem with that? You know, Musk himself said we're going to put information out there and it's going to be wrong.
Months. We're talking 18 months. They have 18 months to get this done before this department is no longer in existence. Hang on. When you are working this fast to find out where you're going to make cuts, you're going to get things wrong. And then you're going to have to change it. And then you're going to have to go back on stuff. They're not taking 4 years. They're taking 18 months. And that is not a lot of time to do everything perfectly accurate. It is about progress. If they get 80% of what they're putting out there in the savings correct, and if they're reporting even 60% of what they're reporting is correct on the numbers, I'm happy.
So you'll be happy with 60% accuracy.
If that's 60% savings on $105 billion, yeah. If 60% of that is accurate, I'm pretty happy with that much savings. When we have trillions of dollars in debt in this country, trillions of dollars in debt, I am very happy, even if I feel like sometimes when you and I talk that you're taking notes. For what I say, because you're going to come back to me. I'm going to hold her to this.
No, it's mainly because I'm going to totally forget what you said. I have to write things down. You know, I have a really bad memory.
I'm watching you and I'm like, yeah, you do have a bad memory. I'm like, I feel like I'm in school.
I will completely,
and she's taking down everything I said.
Because I know the other day when you said 1918, I came back later on and said something like it was 1869. And I'm like, God, it was 2 seconds had passed and I couldn't remember the year. Trust me, you want me to write things down. I am all for an entity like Doge to go in and cut government waste. I think that it is interesting that they are not really getting to the massive waste. There is still, why are we doing things like sending
I think they will.
Weapons?
I think they will.
No, they're not going to.
I think they will.
You can write down and come back to me if they actually do it. But they're not getting rid of things like sending bombs to countries that don't need any bombs to kill more innocent people. Why are we doing that? But if you want to talk about government waste, why? And I don't think the American people want this. You're more okay with this Doge going and cutting things like cancer research or medical research or things that are helping people within the country, but not looking at all of the things that we do outside of the country that are not necessary.
I mean,
I also think
they're focusing on the wrong things because
they're focusing on the wrong things.
The way our country is set up is that we spend money in the wrong places.
Yes.
And that includes government.
I completely agree with you.
Yes, that includes government.
And this is where I think the left and the right are actually at the core of it, we are in agreement of there's too much waste. It needs to be cut. The issues are around.
I don't know about that.
No,
I don't know.
We are.
And the reason I say that is because historically, The Democratic Party is about big government, and the Republican Party is about small government. And big government means a lot of money, a lot of people, large organizations, and a lot of bureaucracy.
It's not necessarily big government. From my perspective, it's not about big government. It is about government there to help support communities in the way that we need to provide support for our communities. That is firemen, roads, social services, housing assistance if you need it, so that we can not have homeless people on the streets, so that we all have affordable health care. Now, that is something that one of the most prosperous countries in the world should be able to provide for its citizens, is affordable health care. And the U.S. isn't there right now. That's where the left comes from, is that's not right in a country that has all this money. We should not be having all of this waste. I don't think that the left is necessarily for a big government. They're for a government that supports its people.
But if you look at the agencies and the departments within the U.S. government in the last 4 years, when we did have a Democratic president in office, that have become extremely inflated.
It's not just, no, you cannot say that this is a Democratic issue versus a Republican issue, because the Republicans have been in office just as many times as Democrats, and they didn't do away with that government waste. So this is something.
But we're doing away with it now.
Hey, and trust me, my husband and I talk about this. The fact that Trump may be just what the country needs, and if he comes in and that's all he's doing, and if you're right and he's not in it for the money, which I will eat my hat if that is the case.
You don't wear hats.
I wear hats.
You don't wear hats.
I wear hats a lot. Believe it or not,
you do?
I wear hats a lot. I buy a hat. Every time we travel, I'm buying a hat.
Oh my gosh, me too.
Yeah. Yes. And you and I have a very similar hat too. I know. We have become our mother.
Oh my
But
gosh,
anyway.
we have become our mother.
That's a whole nother podcast.
We're the hat ladies. Oh no.
I forgot what I was saying. I was on a roll. No, my husband and I were talking about
actually succeeds.
If he actually succeeds and doesn't destroy the economy in the process, more power to him.
I don't think the economy is going to be destroyed.
Every economist disagrees with you.
I read some of that, but I am going to go back to something that you said when I said 5,400 people are getting cut from the Department of Defense, and you're like, oh, that's a drop in the bucket. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of salaries, and that's a lot of money. And when you take that across 20 different agencies, right? Like you're saying,
I'll be surprised if it's even $1 trillion. How much is it realistically, in the amount of money that we need to cut?
Okay, so we're going to, I would say, sis, that we agree, in summary, we agree there is waste in government.
A lot of waste in government, yes.
Yes, we agree on that.
Yes.
We I think also agree that the hatchet approach and the way they're executing this is not the most sound way of doing it.
Yes.
However, I disagree with a small nuance of that, because if this organization is only in existence for 18 months, this is how they may have to do it. I am actually going to go and research, now that we've talked about Elon Musk's getting a lot of government contracts, because that was an issue. I'm going to look at it.
You think that would be an ethical issue if he is?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll be interested. You'll have to text me what you find, because the research that I've done, he has gotten a lot of contracts.
I will research that, and that will definitely piss me off.
I think on this we agree on a lot of things. There is a lot of waste in government.
Once we got into the conversation,
once we were able to actually talk about it. Yeah,
exactly. Once we were able to discuss it and talk about it, and
watching it is definitely entertaining.
I just hope that people listening to us is entertaining. I don't.
Do you think we've entertained?
So much sometimes?
Well, I don't know. We get pretty heated sometimes, but we always come out the other side.
We always do.
Okay.
All right.
So that's
all
enough.
Right. So we're going to agree.
So we never have to talk about Doge again.
Until
they blow something up.
It's going to be out of existence in 16 months. So yeah, probably not.
If we're still talking in 16 months, if we haven't killed each other.
So now you can stop recording.
That wraps up today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a rating and review. It helps us improve and get the word out.
Reach out to us on Facebook and Instagram or shoot us an email at agreedtodisagree@gmail.com.
Let us know what you think, what topics you'd like us to cover, or any questions you might have. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.